Hi there. This video will present some issues with internet searching. So it might be something that is for beginners or for the beginning of your research, even if you expect it to be um, a long, complex research project. So people typically use Google for searching, and Google is the biggest indexer, right? And you have to remember what an internet index is, right? It's a computer software that visits all of the websites that are out there. It knows where to find them and it updates them, right? And it creates an index. And it used to be that those indexes were very simple, and now they're becoming more complicated with tags of what whoever created the website wants their website to be known as or known for. But in the end, there is full text searching and indexing with these search engines. Google became the winner after a kind of brutal battle from the beginning of the internet. Um, and it sort of won over things that were less commercially um, oriented. And Google is very powerful, but has two limitations. One is that it's a marketing tool for them to aggregate your data if you allow them, and to sell you stuff, advertise stuff, and for them to sell your data as a consumer. And so that's one limitation, and everybody knows about this, but people don't quite understand what it means when you do searching, because it does affect the searching. The second problem is that it's not particularly malleable to controlling a search. Google used to, but no longer responds very well to Boolean um, phrases and requests, Boolean operators. So with Google, you have to be very careful in how you use it and understand that if it doesn't show up quickly, it could very well be out there. But Google might not be interpreting your search correctly, your request in a commercial direction. It will do that very easily, right? So you have to make sure for your searches in Google to be very specific and unambiguous. Basically, when you do a Google search, you want to be as specific as possible and hopefully use quotes, because the quotes operator works, right? So when you use quotes, if you were looking for research on Dia de la Raza in Latin America or Puerto Rico or whatever, and you put in Dia de la Raza without quotes, you'll find stuff that God knows what you'll find, right? So if you put it in quotes, right, it's much better, right, in the results, right, and more likely to yield research, references, newspaper and magazine references, or actual advanced research, right? Okay, so that, and obviously what I'm looking at here has potential, except for the journalism, which is very repetitive, right? And that's a problem with Google searches, but that's another story, right? Now, notice that AI gave me some additional results here, and that's because I have the setting of Google search that allows AI to interpret my searches further and to produce an aggregate report with what it thinks are the best links. And this is obviously, AI has tremendous potential for searches, but how that will change searching on the internet is yet to be seen. But for now, you can have the standard Google search and the AI generated Google search, right? Um, and obviously, these results reference um, Spanish text, obviously, because that's the phrase that I put in Spanish here, right? Um, so because I put that quote, the search in quotes, it's definitely not able to try to sell me anything. There's probably no advertising that will show up. I mean, in this particular case, I just can't think of anything that intersects with commercial products. But maybe if the search was in English, uh, as a very specific search, but still, it could come up with some advertising or some initial links here that it wants to prop up, right? So beware of Google when you do fuzzy searches, because it's going to give you all the stuff that somebody can make money from first. Sponsored links, which will say sponsored links, but also things that interpret your search as a commercial search, one that will involve buying and selling something. Well, preferably buying something. So therefore, use the language and the terminology as restricted as you can in the Google search. This is a page I used to use this a lot that allows you more controlled searching in the Google sphere, right? And obviously here, this one here, for example, is the the equivalent to using quotes, right? This exact phrase, right? So this helps sort out region, language. You can even add sites, right? Some of these things you can do from the command line, but this is, like the quotes, special tricks that you can do from the command line, and that's another page. I don't remember exactly where it is or what it's called, but basically it's tips like this, right? When you do a search, if you do this, right? If you do this kind of search, um, site, it will only search sites that end in edu. Okay. And if you wanted to restrict it to Spain, well, then you use the dot whatever it is for Spain, or whatever, CA for Canada, whatever. But this helps with the searches if you're confident that your results are produced within the educational domain. So, um, and again, you see it here immediately. U Chicago, U Michigan, U Oberlin, Vanderbilt, FSU, right? And now it's funny that these are educational, the EDU designation is in the US, as far as I know, not Latin America. But a Spanish search is showing up with these distinct searches. And University of Texas, El Paso. Okay. So now I don't know where the link is for these different Google tools. But the closest thing is this, right? In other words, if I had done here.edu, right, it's the same thing. So there's a command line version for all of this. I just don't know what they are, where they're listed. Um, and if you want to do some advanced searching, you can obviously control it from the command line, from the search box, aka command line. Now, the other thing that Google has, and I'm going to open this up here, that is really important for research is Google Books. And Google Books is a distinct site. And what Google Books will do is it'll search the gazillions, billions of books that it has scanned in, well, maybe millions of books, but billions of pages, including commercially available books that, there's been lawsuits over this, how much they can show you, how much they can scan in. And this overlaps, but not completely, with HathiTrust Library. And I'll be covering HathiTrust Library in a separate video. But HathiTrust and Google Books share the public access material that Google initiated as a scanning project in the major research libraries of the U.S., and that's what produced the HathiTrust Library. So here, modern scholarship and old published books, government documents, whatever, right? If they got scanned in, uh, you can search the most minute hidden footnotes for very specific, and this has to be here, very specifics, because if you put in Mexico, well, it's gonna show you what it thinks are all the books on Mexico that, who wants to see that, right? And again, the classic tool here is I'll explain this in a separate video, by the way, is to close your funnel, so to speak, and to make your searches smaller and more specific. So Guerrero Rural Development shows really interesting books on Guerrero, maybe. And like, for example, this one here, obviously these books include a section on Guerrero, right? Rancheros Revolt. But you start getting these things here where biofuel development and foreign assistance programs, 1983, and it'll show you, the snippet view shows you why, it's found inside page 291. Right? And in this case, it's probably full text because it's a government document. So that's an item that overlaps with HathiTrust Library, probably, that you can download full text. But there's going to be other weird references. And obviously here, it'd be interesting to see how it changes when it's in quotes. It does change a little bit. Now, the important thing here is that you get a preview of the book itself, full text, if the page is available. If it's not available, it'll tell you on page 5, there's a reference to your search terms, but we can't show it to you. But it's useful because it's a very specific search that you really want to find references to some individual or some very specific event. Then you go look up the book somewhere else. But at least this thing helped you find electronically, right? The other thing that Google has is Google Scholar. Oops, which is, well, I committed a typo, but Google is typo tolerant to some extent, which is a big difference between Google and library catalog searches, where if you make a typo, then it says it's not going to correct it. It says nothing here. So Google Scholar has, interesting that it has case law and articles. Never noticed that before, but it's basically an academic index of who knows what they cover, right? And it'd be interesting to cover the same search. And very different list. Some are the same, but anyway, so there you have Google search and the issues and resources associated with Google. Remember that the searching you do is only as good as the terms that you use and your ability to engage with and control the tools that any specific search engine gives you. Alternatives to Google are Bing, which probably is just as big, but people don't use it. And sometimes the results, well, you can see here, the results are very different. Some academic content, but then there are additional alternatives like Kagi, which is fee-based, but the emphasis on alternatives has been to give you privacy, and in the kind of thing I'm discussing, privacy is just not an issue. However, if an index is good, and I have heard good things about this one, um, the the lack of a commercial interest means that they might give you some uh, better results, right? Google interprets your searches, right, and ranks things in a way that sometimes is absurd, right, and useless. And Google really sucks when you're doing very open-ended, you know, if you weren't looking for very specific things, but you're looking for, Mexico, some broad, politics of the PRI, it's gonna be interfere, it's gonna interpret the search, right? Especially if you do it in English. So these other alternatives have the possibility, and that they won't rank your results. Then additional resources are the Wayback Machine of the Internet Archive, and the Internet Archive is obviously a tremendous resource where you can do a search. It's a public access database with all kinds of things that people put here. And then the Wayback Machine is an indexer and ripper, site ripper, for how the internet used to be in any given moment. So if there's a website that died or that was removed, you might find old versions of it here. In other words, this system takes portraits of the internet as of a given date and copies everything as much as it can and saves it. And this has been useful to me in various ways, including some items that have been removed from, or when a website is completely redone and something disappears, well, you go to the old version. And this is another alternative. You, um, I've not experimented with it, but I would stick to Google and its subsidiaries of Google Scholar and Google Books and MSN, the Microsoft Bing, which is Microsoft, right? And they have been a lot less successful at marketizing their material, and they might do less ranking and less interference of advertising and so forth. And this actually looks interesting. These suggested searches, Google doesn't have that as far as I know. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. The real critical thing in research is to get beyond Google. So Google is just like the place to look for places to start rather than the place that's going to lead you anywhere in particular. But it can help you with initial scholarship before you take a deep dive into the academic databases, or if you don't have access to the academic databases. It can be helpful, especially with recent publications by scholars themselves who tend to publish, to post on the internet their own work. And Google Books, obviously, is extremely powerful in the other direction, right? Of stuff that goes back centuries that has been scanned in full text. And if you're interested in that, I'll be posting um, a video on HathiTrust and a video on newspaper research as well. So look up my new videos, and as usual, please subscribe and send me any questions you might have. Take it easy.